She was forced to marry an elderly doctor to pay for her father's medical treatment. What she never expected was that he turned out to be the owner of the hospital, and that her life would become unexpectedly happy with him. Before the story begins, take a moment to like and subscribe to Stories with Meaning, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The sound of labored breathing filled the sterile hospital room, trapped between antiseptic-scented walls. The dim afternoon light cast the silhouette of a young woman sitting upright beside the bed. Her name was Clara Whitmore. She was only 23 years old, yet her shoulders already carried a weight far heavier than her years. Her gentle eyes, once bright with youth, now looked dull, holding back tears that threatened to fall at any moment. Clara was a nurse. Ironically, she was powerless to save the person she loved most. Her father, Arthur Whitmore, lay weak and motionless, slowly losing a battle against a disease that was devouring him from the inside. Clara had always been proud of her father. Arthur, though only a retired office clerk, was the most honest and loving man she had ever known. Their life was simple, but their home had always been warm. Since her mother passed away many years ago, Arthur had been Clara's only support in the world. Now, watching him struggle for breath, Clara felt as though her own soul was being torn away. "Dad, try to drink a little water," she whispered softly, guiding the straw to his dry lips. Arthur shook his head weakly, the effort clearly exhausting. His aging eyes stared at Clara with a look filled with longing and deep concern. Clara knew. There was something he wanted to say, something heavier than his illness. "Clara," Arthur's voice was hoarse, barely audible. She leaned closer. "I'm here, Dad." "I won't be here much longer," he murmured. "It feels like my time has been cut short by invisible scissors." Her heart sank. "Don't say that," she pleaded. "You'll recover. The doctors said the treatment is going well." She was lying. As a nurse, she had already seen his medical records. She knew the prognosis was grim. But how could she say it out loud? Arthur smiled faintly. "Don't lie to me, my dear. I see it in your eyes. You've always been good at hiding your pain, but I raised you." He took a long, trembling breath. "There's one last request. You must grant it for my peace of mind." "Anything," I promised. He squeezed her cold hand. "Marry Dr. Adrian Cole." The words struck her like a sudden storm. "Dad? What?" Her voice trembled. "Did I hear you right?" "Dr. Cole, the doctor treating me." She knew him, quiet, reserved, always wearing the same slightly worn lab coat. He was in his early 50s, decades older than her. "But why?" cried Clara. "I barely know him. I want to marry someone I love." Arthur struggled to speak. "He's a good man. He'll protect you. Trust me, for your own happiness." Happiness? Marrying a man without love, what kind of happiness was that? Yet, seeing her father's pale face, Clara couldn't resist. "All right, Dad. I promise." Peace washed over Arthur's face. The next day, Clara went to find Dr. Adrian Cole. She found him alone in his modest office, reviewing files under the soft glow of a desk lamp. His thick glasses cast shadows over his tired eyes. Dr. Cole wasn't a prominent figure at Riverside General Hospital in Portland, Oregon. He worked in general medicine, lived simply, and spoke only when necessary. His eyes always seemed to carry an old sadness, like a story long buried. "Doctor, may I come in?" He looked up, startled by her swollen eyes. "Clara, how is your father?" she said quietly. He's getting worse. I'm here because of his request." She took a deep breath. "He asked that I marry you." Dr. Cole stood up abruptly. "I know," he said calmly. "Your father already spoke to me." Her eyes widened. "So you asked him?" "No," he replied firmly. "I didn't. He's an old friend. I couldn't refuse his final wish." Then he added coldly, "This marriage will be in name only. No love, no expectations. After the agreed time, you're free." "I won't touch you," he said plainly. The words hurt more than comforted. "Still, I can't break my promise," Clara said at last. "I'll marry you." The wedding was held quietly inside the hospital room. No celebration, no romance, just vows spoken beside a dying man. That night, Arthur Whitmore passed away. Clara screamed in grief, holding his lifeless body. She had lost her father and gained a husband she barely knew. Standing at the doorway, Dr. Adrian Cole watched her silently. "You're not alone," he said softly. "You're my wife now. I'll take care of everything." No embrace, only certainty. And behind that promise, a secret Clara was yet to uncover. That morning, Clara Whitmore left the house she had grown up in, a home filled with memories, and walked away with a husband who was still a stranger, toward a new life shrouded in secrets and deep sorrow. She did not yet know that the modest house Dr. Adrian Cole called home was merely the first mask of a plot twist that would eventually change everything. Clara's world felt like glass that had just begun to crack. She moved through the fog, following the steps of her husband, Adrian, who was now her only bridge to an uncertain future. After her father's quiet funeral, Adrian drove her to a house. It was not located in an elite neighborhood, not the kind of place one might imagine when marrying a doctor. Instead, it was a simple house with a wide yard set slightly away from the noise of the city. The house was well maintained, yet eerily silent, as if it had been storing years of unspoken solitude. Clara stepped inside. The interior was dominated by neutral colors, sturdy old wooden furniture, and above all, an atmosphere of rigid order. There were no personal touches, no family photographs, only thick medical textbooks lining the shelves. This isn't a home, Clara thought. It's a museum of discipline. Dr. Cole placed Clara's small bag on the wooden floor. He didn't offer to help unpack. He didn't offer comfort. He remained formal, distant, and cold. "This is your room," he said, pointing to a door at the end of the corridor. "My room is upstairs." Then, firmly, "Remember our agreement. No interference, no demands. You are safe here. You are my wife only to fulfill my promise to your late father." Clara nodded silently, her throat tightening. She wanted to scream, to demand warmth, to demand answers about this so-called old friendship with her father. But she felt she had no right. Her role now was that of a contractual wife, a bitter label that stung her tongue. "All right, doctor," she replied deliberately, using the formal title as a boundary. Dr. Cole paused, a slight frown forming on his brow. "Call me Adrian when we are at home. It would be suspicious if anyone overheard, but in public, call me doctor for professionalism." "Adrian," Clara repeated softly. The name felt foreign and hollow. "What did you mean by a set period of time when we spoke at the hospital?" Adrian leaned against the doorframe, hands tucked into his pockets. Calm, controlled, yet Clara sensed a steel wall surrounding him. "Your father asked me to protect you until you are truly independent, stable, and secure. He said, 'I've arranged a job for you, somewhere far better than the regional hospital where we met.'" Clara stiffened. "A job?" You'll start next week. You'll earn a proper salary and work in an environment that supports your career. That's part of the promise." "Where?" she asked, stunned. "At St. Heltian Medical Center, the largest and most prestigious private hospital in Portland. I've handled all your paperwork. You'll work as a ward nurse." Clara was speechless. St. Heltian Medical Center was every nurse's dream, an institution only accessible to top graduates or powerful connections. How did you manage that?" she asked cautiously. "They're extremely selective." Adrian gave a brief smile that never reached his eyes. "I have some connections. I know a few people on the board. Don't worry about that. Your job is to work well and focus on your career." "And your job?" Clara asked, gathering her courage. "To keep my promise," he replied firmly. "To protect you and make sure you're safe. Nothing more, nothing less." He turned toward the kitchen. "I'll prepare dinner. You haven't eaten properly since yesterday." That contradiction unsettled her even more. He was cold, yet responsible, distant, yet meticulously attentive. Dr. Adrian Cole was a walking paradox, a man who gave her financial security while stripping away emotional warmth. Their first dinner together was painfully silent. Only the clink of cutlery filled the space. "Adrian," Clara finally spoke, "can you tell me more about my father? How did you become friends? He never talked about it." Dr. Cole put down his spoon. When he looked at her, his gaze was no longer cold, but filled with a deep, bottomless sorrow. "We met when we were both struggling to build our careers," he said quietly. "Your father was a man of integrity. I owe him my life." "A debt," Clara whispered. "Is that why you married me?" Adrian nodded without hesitation. "Yes, that was the beginning, and the only reason." Then softly, "I've lost many things in my life, Clara. I refuse to lose one last promise." "And the woman in that photograph?" Clara asked suddenly. Adrian froze. His eyes hardened instantly. "Never ask about that," he said in a low, warning voice. "My past is mine alone. It has nothing to do with this marriage. Dig any deeper, and you'll regret it." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. The next morning, Adrian left before Clara woke up. He left a note on the dining table. "I've gone to work. The house key is in the drawer. Rest today. Tomorrow I'll take you to St. Heltian for orientation. Breakfast is on the table. Toast, perfectly cooked eggs, a glass of warm milk." Again, the contradiction. That day, Clara unpacked her few belongings and explored the house. Adrian's bedroom was locked. His study wasn't. Inside, she found stacks of advanced medical journals, rare research papers on obscure diseases. Why would a general practitioner read material like this? Then she noticed a small photo frame partially hidden beneath documents. It showed a younger Adrian shaking hands with a familiar man, Arthur Whitmore. They were smiling broadly, standing before a large inauguration plaque. The inscription was hidden in shadow. "Dad, you really were close," Clara whispered. The mystery deepened. That afternoon, she called her old friend, Alina Moore. "Lena, promise you won't freak out." "What is it? You disappeared after your dad passed," Alina replied anxiously. "I got married." Silence. "You're joking." "To Dr. Adrian Cole." "The older doctor?" Alina gasped. "He's kind, and he got me a job at St. Heltian." "That hospital is elite level, Clara. How is that even possible?" "I don't know, but I have to live this life. It was my promise to my father." That night, Adrian returned exhausted. As he was about to retreat into his room, Clara stopped him. "Thank you for the job opportunity. I'll work hard." A flicker of warmth crossed his eyes. "That's your responsibility now," he said. "Sleep. Tomorrow matters." The door closed. Clara stared at the door. She had given up her life to a man who protected her with cold discipline, offered her a brilliant career, and concealed a dark past. Holding the photo tightly, she whispered, I'll find out the truth, Dad." The next morning, Clara stood before the mirror wearing her new nurse uniform, a second skin that felt unfamiliar. Today was her first day at St. Heltian Medical Center, a towering monument of healthcare at the heart of the city, and the stage where Dr. Adrian Cole's mask would slowly begin to fall, and the great secret would finally surface. She knew that beneath this uniform, she carried a complicated status, the wife of a mysterious doctor and the inheritor of an unresolved promise. Adrian was already waiting for her in the car. He was no longer wearing his worn-out lab coat, but a neatly pressed dress shirt and tailored slacks. He looked more authoritative now, though that strange aura of restraint still clung to him. "Ready?" Adrian asked, his tone as formal as ever. "Ready," Clara replied, briefly. The drive to the hospital passed in familiar silence. Clara studied him from the corner of her eye. This cold man, her husband, had turned her life upside down in an instant. He had given her an extraordinary opportunity, but at the cost of her emotional freedom. When they arrived at the parking lot, Adrian gave his final instructions. "Remember, Clara, here we're just colleagues. I'm Dr. Adrian Cole, a general practitioner at Outpatient Clinic C. You are Nurse Clara Whitmore. No one can know about our marriage. I don't want gossip or special treatment." "I understand," Clara said firmly. "I never wanted special treatment." Adrian studied her face, searching for sincerity. Then he nodded. "Good. And Clara, if you have any problems, contact me. Even if we sleep in separate rooms, my responsibility toward you is absolute." The words were double-edged, comforting and oppressive all at once. Clara began her first days at St. Heltian Medical Center. The environment was vastly different: advanced facilities, highly professional staff. With her experience, Clara adapted quickly. She was assigned to the intensive care ward, an area demanding relentless focus. Days passed. She rarely encountered Adrian. He remained busy at the clinic and often returned home late at night. Their marriage moved along cold, parallel tracks: silent breakfasts, separate workdays, and nights spent behind closed doors. The house became a quiet witness to their lonely union. One afternoon during her break, Clara spotted Adrian in the hospital lobby. He stood in a corner, speaking with a sharply dressed man, clearly a hospital executive. The executive's posture was respectful, almost deferential. Clara hid behind a pillar, overhearing fragments of their conversation. "Yes, sir. We'll process the budget for the new equipment immediately, as you instructed. Ensure transparency in procurement, and remember, I don't want any information leaks. I just want operations running properly." Clara inhaled sharply. "Sir, budget, instructions." This was not a conversation between a general practitioner and an executive. This was a conversation between a superior and a subordinate. "Who are you, really, Adrian?" The role of a simple clinic doctor suddenly felt like a carefully maintained disguise. When the executive left, Clara approached him. "What was that about?" she asked, suspicion flashing in her eyes. Adrian stiffened, but quickly composed himself. "Clara, you're crossing a line. I told you not to interfere with my professional matters." "This was not ordinary," she shot back. "He called you sir. He discussed budgets. General practitioners don't have that kind of authority. You keep hiding something from me, something far bigger than my father's request." Her voice trembled with frustration. Adrian exhaled, a rare gesture of fatigue. He pulled her aside into a quieter corridor. "All right, listen. I'm a senior consultant here. I own a small stake. I invested years ago. I use old connections to monitor service quality. That's all. I'm still a doctor, Clara. I want this hospital to function properly." The explanation felt thin, like a leaf trying to cover a massive tree. Then why the secrecy? Clara pressed. Why pretend to be a clinic doctor? General practitioners don't work in outpatient clinics. That's how I work, Adrian replied coolly. I prefer the front lines. End of discussion. Focus on your job. His tone left no room for argument. Though she tried to accept his explanation, Clara couldn't shake the unease. Quietly, she asked around. Dr. Cole? Nurse Helen Brooks said with a knowing smile. He's been here forever. Very straight-laced. A bit strange. Works in the clinic, yet frequently meets with the board in VIP rooms. We all suspect he's connected to the major shareholders. He's like a shadow here, present but never fully explained. So it wasn't just her. The next day, Clara saw Adrian rush toward the emergency department, his face tense, stripped of his usual composure. Shortly afterwards, a massive bouquet arrived at the nurse's station. White roses. No sender's name. One nurse grinned teasingly. Looks like you've got a secret admirer, Clara. White roses. Pure admiration. Clara picked up the card. Take care of your health. I've arranged everything. A.C. Her breath caught. Those initials, she had seen them before, on one of Adrian's notes at home. Later that day, while retrieving forms from her locker, Clara found a thick, unmarked envelope. Inside, a large sum of cash. Her heart pounded. She found Adrian resting briefly in the doctor's lounge. "What is this?" she demanded, holding up the envelope. He wasn't surprised. "It's for you," he said calmly. "Extra allowance. You need security in a big city." "I earn a salary," Clara snapped, "and it's more than enough. Why give me this secretly? I don't want to be accused of taking bribes." She pushed the envelope back toward him. Adrian's voice softened. "Listen to me, Clara. This isn't a bribe. It's compensation. You left your home. You honored a painful promise. I can't give you warmth, so let me give you financial security." "I don't need your money," she said, her voice breaking. "I need clarity. I need to know why my father asked me to marry a man who sends nameless roses and secret cash." She looked him straight in the eye. "Who are you, really?" Adrian stood. He wasn't angry, just deeply tired. "Don't force me to tell you something you're not ready to hear. My promise to your father went far beyond marriage. Some truths must stay hidden to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Clara whispered. "From a fate that should never have returned." He turned away. "That's enough. I'm busy. Go home. I'll be late." Clara left the room shaken. She now sensed that Adrian wasn't just hiding wealth or influence, but carrying an enormous burden. His cold kindness, endless money, that impenetrable mystery, all of it formed a massive puzzle. She felt her father's presence, as if Arthur Whitmore was watching from afar, as if his final request had been a lifeline she didn't yet understand. She would be patient. She would observe. This silent marriage was only the beginning. Life continued in the quiet house. Busy workdays, cold nights. St. Hallian Medical Center became her battlefield, where she proved herself as a capable nurse independent of her hidden marital status. At home, Adrian's rigidity remained an invisible wall. The envelope stayed untouched, a reminder of the mystery waiting to be solved. Clara noticed his strange routine. By day, a clinic doctor. By night, locked away in his study, the secret command center, she was sure of it. One Sunday night, Adrian received a call. His tone changed instantly. "Emergency," he said, grabbing his coat. "Stay home." "What kind of emergency? It's late." "Hospital-related. A patient needs me." "Aren't there doctors on duty?" "This is personal," he replied. "I'll be back soon." He left without waiting for her answer. 15 minutes later, Clara followed, heart pounding, taking a taxi and asking the driver to keep his distance. They didn't head towards St. Hallian Medical Center. Instead, the car turned toward a run-down neighborhood on the outskirts of Portland.
The taxi stopped at the end of a narrow alley. Clara saw Adrian's car parked there. She moved quietly. Ahead, Adrian stood in front of a dilapidated row house, speaking gently to a middle-aged woman who was crying uncontrollably. Clara hid behind a street lamp and listened.
Please, doctor. My child needs surgery immediately. We don't have a single dollar left. Our health coverage has expired. Calm down, ma'am. Please don't cry. Adrian's voice was gentle, so unlike the rigid tone he always used with Clara. I'm not here to collect payment. I've already taken care of everything. Taken care of what, doctor? Your child will be transferred tomorrow to St. Hallian Medical Center. The surgery will be performed the day after. The medical fees, the hospital room, the medication, everything is covered by me. Your child will receive the best care available, Adrian explained calmly. Clara's eyes widened. Transferring a patient from a cramped rental unit to St. Hallian, that elite hospital, with all expenses fully covered, Adrian had carried out a massive act of charity in complete secrecy. Oh, God, doctor, I don't know how to repay your kindness, the woman sobbed, kissing Adrian's hand. Don't repay me with anything, Adrian said softly, gently pulling his hand away. Just take good care of your child. I'll be going now. Tomorrow I'll make sure an ambulance picks you up. Clara watched as Adrian walked back to his car. His face looked relieved, yet beneath it lay a deep, quiet sorrow. Adrian was not a man obsessed with money and stocks, as she had accused him of being. Behind his cold exterior lived a heart of gold, hidden in darkness. Clara returned home first and hid in her room. When Adrian arrived, she pretended to be asleep. The next morning, at breakfast, Clara tried to open a conversation, testing his honesty. You had something urgent last night. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Yes, hospital operations. The patient you were handling is safe now. Clara stared into his eyes. Adrian returned the gaze, slightly startled. Of course, all patients are always safe in my care. Why, Clara? It's nothing, she said softly, offering a thin smile. She decided not to reveal what she knew. She wanted to observe him longer. Over the next few days, Clara kept witnessing Adrian's hidden kindness. He never came to St. Hallian Medical Center without white roses, which he always claimed were not from him, yet he personally made sure they were placed on Clara's nursing desk. One afternoon, Clara saw an art collector delivering an antique painting to their house. The artwork was exquisite and clearly priceless. Later, she overheard Adrian on the phone. The painting has arrived. Make sure it's displayed in the pediatric ward. I want the children to feel comfortable. And send the monthly donations to the orphanage. Use the anonymous account. Clara stood frozen behind the kitchen door. Monthly donations. An antique painting for the children's ward. Adrian, the man who dressed simply and drove an ordinary car, was a remarkable secret philanthropist. He was like a great sheltering tree hiding golden fruit beneath its shade. He never wanted praise. He only wanted to do good without a name. Clara felt her heart begin to soften. The resentment and sense of betrayal she once carried slowly dissolved, replaced with respect and curiosity. She no longer saw Adrian as the cold, older doctor her father had forced upon her, but as a man burdened by something immense. One night, Clara sat alone in the quiet living room trying to read. Adrian emerged from his study, looking exhausted, his hair slightly disheveled. Why are you still awake, Clara? His voice was softer than usual. I can't sleep, Clara answered honestly. This house is too quiet. Adrian fell silent. He sat on the sofa across from her, keeping the distance he always maintained. I know, he said quietly. Since Maya left, this house lost its voice. Clara froze. He had mentioned a name, one that clearly carried pain. Maya. She's the woman in that photograph, isn't she? Clara asked carefully. Adrian nodded. His eyes darkened again, grief smoldering like embers beneath ash. She was my wife. She died 5 years ago. She was a brilliant young doctor, full of passion. We met when this hospital was still small. What happened to her? Clara asked gently. Adrian lowered his gaze. A rare disease. I was a doctor, yet I failed to save her. That was my greatest failure, Clara. A failure that still haunts me. A wave of empathy washed over Clara. Now she understood the sadness in Adrian's eyes. He wasn't just a widower, he was a doctor carrying the weight of professional failure and lost love at the same time. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered sincerely. "Thank you." "After she died," Adrian continued, "I vowed to dedicate my life to helping others suffering from rare diseases, especially those who can't afford treatment. That's why I'm often busy outside the clinic. I didn't want your father to tell you any of this. I didn't want you to feel sorry for me. I only wanted you to focus on your future. So, the child in the outskirts of the city, that surgery was part of it?" Clara asked, now daring to test him. Adrian met her gaze directly. He wasn't angry that she knew, only faintly disappointed that she had followed him. "You followed me." "I was worried. I saw your car somewhere unusual. I'm sorry," Clara said, lowering her head. Adrian sighed deeply. "Don't do that again. It's dangerous. But yes, that was part of my promise to myself. Clara, I use everything I have, connections, money, influence, to make sure no one dies because of cost or negligence, including your father." My father died because of his illness," Clara said quietly. "Yes," Adrian replied, "but I made sure he received the best care and the most comfort I could give him. That was my debt to him, and now that promise has passed to you." The words brought Clara back to the central mystery. Adrian's promise was fiercely protective. He funded her life, he gave her a promising career, he shielded her from dangers she didn't even know existed. "Adrian," she said firmly, "I appreciate everything you've done, but I need to know, why did my father force me to marry you? You could have protected me without this marriage if it was only about repaying a debt." Adrian stood. The wall went back up. "Not yet, Clara. There is a far greater and far more sensitive reason why this marriage had to happen, a reason tied to your future and my past. Go to sleep now. I have work to finish." Clara knew she couldn't push him further, but she also knew she had just seen a beam of light in the darkness. Adrian, the cold, distant doctor, was a hidden guardian angel, and within Clara, new feelings began to grow. Not romantic love, but an overwhelming sense of safety and respect. Those feelings flourished inside their silent marriage, and Clara understood she had to be ready, because when the great truth finally emerged, their world would be turned upside down. She resolved to stand by Adrian, even if it meant continuing to investigate her own husband's secrets. Their relationship entered a new phase after the night of Adrian's confession about Maya. Clara shed her hatred, replacing it with deep respect for the secret philanthropist. Still, Adrian kept his distance. To Clara, he became a distant star, brilliant, untouchable. She could admire his light, but she could never reach it. At St. Hallian Medical Center, Clara's beauty and warmth began to attract attention. A young, handsome doctor, Dr. Ethan Ross, recently returned from specialty training abroad, was often seen lingering around Clara's ward. Ethan was cheerful, energetic, a complete contrast to Adrian's somber presence. One afternoon, Ethan approached Clara in the staff lounge. "Nurse Clara, I've noticed how meticulous you are with patients in the VIP ward," he smiled brightly. "Where did you study? It's rare to see a nurse with your level of skill here." "Thank you, doctor. I graduated from a local university, but I enjoy learning new things." "Don't just learn, Clara," Ethan said playfully. "Sometimes we need to enjoy life. There's a great new cafe downtown. Want to check it out tonight?" His gaze was full of interest. Clara felt awkward. She needed to refuse, but she was also used to Adrian's emotional distance. She felt like a bird trapped in a golden cage, longing for normal interaction. "I'm sorry, Dr. Ross. I already have plans," she said gently. Suddenly, a cold baritone cut in. "Of course she has plans." Adrian stood in the doorway, wearing his doctor's coat. His expression was like a storm cloud on a bright day.
instantly chilling the air. Ethan looked startled. "Dr. Cole, I didn't see you. I was just inviting Nurse Clara for a light discussion outside working hours. Nothing serious." "It is serious," Adrian replied coolly. "Nurse Clara is handling sensitive cases. She needs full focus." His sharp gaze locked on Ethan, not Clara. There was a subtle flash of protectiveness, a clear signal of possession. Ethan, known for his strong ego, looked slightly offended. "Of course, doctor. My apologies for disturbing Nurse Clara's break." He left with a forced smile. After Ethan disappeared, Adrian turned to Clara. "What are you doing, Clara?" His voice was low, warning. "I didn't do anything," she snapped. "He just invited me for coffee. Aren't we only husband and wife on paper? I'm free to interact with anyone." She felt defensive. Part of her liked seeing Adrian jealous. Another part hated how he controlled her. Adrian's face hardened. "I don't care about the marriage on paper," he said coldly, "but you are my wife, and you work under my supervision. Watch your behavior. I don't like you getting close to Dr. Ross." "Why? Are you—"
That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She decided to do something she knew would invite a storm, crossing a line she had promised herself she would never cross. She would violate Adrian's privacy. She walked toward Adrian's study, a room that was always locked. That night, for reasons she couldn't explain, the door wasn't fully secured, as if fate itself had decided to open a path for her. Clara stepped inside cautiously. The scent of old paper and antiseptic greeted her at once. Her eyes went straight to Adrian's desk. She opened a drawer she had always known to be locked. Inside, she found stacks of confidential corporate documents and several critical medical files. Hidden behind them was a small photo frame. Clara picked it up. Her heart began to race. She expected to see a photograph of the late Maya, but it wasn't. The photo showed a stunning young woman, her hair flowing freely, her eyes bright with life. She smiled warmly, leaning against Adrian's shoulder. Adrian in the picture looked much younger, not tense as he was now. His eyes radiated genuine happiness. Clara turned the photo over. On the back, written in elegant handwriting, were the words, "For my beloved father." Clara felt the world collapse around her. Clara? This wasn't Maya. This was another woman, a daughter. But Adrian had never mentioned having a child. And why would this woman, clearly in her 20s, call Adrian father? Tears began to fall. Clara felt utterly deceived. She'd been married to fulfill a promise. She had lived in the shadow of Adrian's first wife. And now she had uncovered a family secret she never imagined. Am I just filling a void? Not only a wife, but a replacement mother for a grown daughter? The shell of trust she had built around Adrian cracked completely. Her hands trembling, Clara returned the photo to the drawer. She left the room, her chest burning with rage and a fresh sense of betrayal. The next morning, breakfast was painfully cold. Clara stared at Adrian with sharp, accusing eyes. Adrian appeared as usual, rigid, formal. "I need to talk to you, Adrian," Clara said bluntly. He set his coffee down. "About what, Clara? Dr. Ross again?" "No, this is about your desk drawer." Adrian flinched, just slightly. He was meticulous. Of course he knew. "You went into my study," he said lowly. His voice was dangerous. "I had to. You hide too many things. Who is Clara? Why does she call you father? You have a child, Adrian. You married me, and yet you hid a daughter my age." The pain and disappointment spilled out of her. Adrian closed his eyes. His carefully maintained composure shattered. He stood, leaning against the dining table, one hand gripping his head. "Clara is my daughter," he whispered. The confession struck like thunder in the morning silence. "Then why did you hide her from me? Why didn't you tell me?" "I'm your wife," Clara cried. "Was I just a prop you married to comfort my father while you already had a complete family elsewhere?" Her tears overflowed. "No, listen to me, Clara," Adrian pleaded. "I don't want to hear it," she snapped. "I feel humiliated. My father told me I was marrying a good man, but good men don't lie like this." She grabbed the thick envelope of cash she had kept and threw it on the table. "I don't need your money. I need the truth." Adrian looked at the envelope. When he met her eyes again, the sadness there was raw, no longer an act. "She's not just my daughter," he said quietly. "She is Maya's younger sister. I adopted her after Maya died. She went abroad for college, that's why you never met her." The explanation eased some of Clara's pain, but not her anger. "Then why does she call you father?" "Because I raised her since she was a teenager. Maya was my wife. Her sister was an orphan. She became my child in every way that mattered." He paused. "I didn't tell you because it was complicated. I didn't want you burdened by my family history." "But I'm your wife, Adrian. We live under the same roof. This isn't complicated. This is emotional betrayal." Clara shook her head. "I can't live with all these secrets. I need the whole truth. Why did my father force me to marry you? What kind of debt was so great that my life had to be sacrificed?" Adrian's expression hardened. He knew he could no longer delay. "Very well, Clara," he said. "You want the truth, and you'll have it." His voice regained his authority, now layered with something far more ominous. He walked to a small cabinet in the living room and pulled out a worn folder. "You remember when I said I would protect you from a fate that should never happen?" He handed the folder to Clara. "This is why. This is the real reason behind our marriage, and why I had to have full authority over your life." Clara opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a thick medical report. On the cover page, printed clearly, was her name, Clara Whitmore. Below it, a diagnosis of an extremely rare disease. Clara was a nurse. She understood the terminology. Her eyes widened as she read it again, and again. I'm sick," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes," Adrian said, his eyes filling with tears. "You have the exact same disease that took Maya." Her father didn't want her to know. He had begged Adrian to marry her so she could receive the best and most advanced treatment in the world without ever knowing she was ill. "The debt," Adrian continued, "was your life, Clara, and I promised your father I would save it. That was why he had disguised himself. I'm not just a consultant. I fund the research for this disease. I am your only hope." The truth crashed over Clara like a tsunami. She hadn't married because of love or obligation. She hadn't married to survive. Every mystery, his coldness, his power, his money, now had a single meaning: love hidden inside extreme sacrifice. The documents slipped from her hands. The dining room filled with a deafening silence. The medical file lay on the floor like a bomb that had just detonated. Clara stared at Adrian. Her tears had dried, replaced by numb disbelief. She knew that diagnosis. It was a whispered death sentence. This isn't possible," she said weakly. "I'm fine. I work every day. I don't feel sick." Adrian knelt, picked up the file, and gently took her hand. For the first time, Clara felt his genuine warmth, not cold formality. "That's how this disease works," he said softly. "It hides. No severe symptoms until it's too late. We caught it early, through routine blood tests I quietly arranged while your father was hospitalized." "Your father knew," he continued, "and he begged me. He knew only I could fund and manage this treatment in secrecy." Clara pulled her hand away. "Why didn't he tell me? Why force me into such a painful marriage?" "Because he was afraid," Adrian said. "Afraid you'd give up, afraid you'd panic, and he knew if you refused this marriage, you'd never accept my help. Only as your husband could I ensure you received secret treatment at St. Hallion Medical Center, without suspicion, without payment, without risking your career." Clara stood and paced, shaking. "St. Hallion? What does this have to do with St. Hallion?
I'm just a nurse there." "That's because," Adrian said firmly, standing straight, "I'm the primary owner of the St. Hallian Medical Center network." The second blow landed harder than the first. Adrian Cole, the modest general practitioner, the man in the quiet house, the man with the ordinary car, was the unseen king of a medical empire. Clara laughed hollowly, the sound like shattered glass. The owner? The owner of the entire network? Then why pretend to be a clinic driver? Why live like this? Why all the lies? "These are not lies," Adrian replied sharply. "They are defensive measures. After Maya died, he'd learned that power and money attracted predators. He founded a rare disease research foundation, focused on her disease. He hid his identity to work on the front lines among patients, to see whether the hospital still had a heart or only chased profit. He revealed a hidden whiteboard behind a painting, covered with diagrams, ownership structures, and powerful names. I disguised myself to monitor everything, and when your father came to me in tears, begging me to save your daughter, I knew I had to marry you. The marriage gave me unlimited access to protect you, treat you, and fund the research needed to save your life without anyone suspecting the patient was the owner's wife." Clara looked at him as mask after mask fell away. He wasn't just a philanthropist, he was a hidden billionaire, not just her father's friend, but the guarantor of her life. "So, the white roses, the money, your rejection of Dr. Ross, it was all for me?" "Yes," Adrian said quietly, "especially Dr. Ross. He's the nephew of a minority shareholder who's been trying to overthrow me. I couldn't let him get close to you. You are my weakness, Clara, and he must never know that."
Clara stepped closer to Adrian, her eyes shimmering with tears, caught between a cruel truth and one that was deeply moving. She no longer saw a rigid, aging doctor standing before her, but a man who had sacrificed everything to keep a promise. "Why did you lie about your identity all this time?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you just tell me my father asked you to take care of me and that you're the owner of the hospital?" Adrian looked at her quietly before answering. "Because, Clara," he said softly, "you are independent. You're idealistic. If I had told you I was wealthy, you would have refused. You would have rejected free treatment. You would have risked your life just to protect your principles." His jaw tightened. "I couldn't take that risk, not after what happened to Maya." He placed his hands gently on Clara's shoulders. "I've failed once, Clara. I won't fail again." Clara wrapped her arms around him. What began as an embrace of frustration slowly transformed into one of understanding and acceptance. She finally grasped the weight this man had been carrying alone. "I'm sorry, Adrian," she whispered against his shoulder. "I'm sorry for accusing you of being a fraud. I was just terrified." "I understand, my love. Your fear was natural. Now you know everything. Your illness can't be cured, but it can be controlled. We'll begin treatment next week, discreetly." After that moment of honesty, Adrian no longer returned to the upstairs bedroom. They sat together in the living room as he carefully explained her condition, its prognosis, its risks, and the highly specialized and expensive treatment plan that could only be accessed through his private resources. Clara, with the trained mind of a nurse, absorbed the information with remarkable composure. "So the surgery will be performed at St. Hallian Medical Center," Adrian said, "by a medical team I personally brought in. You'll be registered as an anonymous patient. All expenses will be covered by the humanitarian foundation I run." Clara rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you, Adrian. You're truly my guardian angel." He smiled faintly. "I'm your husband, Clara, and I love you." There was no pressure in his voice, only sincerity, spoken after every mask had fallen. "I do too," Clara replied softly. "I'm starting to love you." But peace never lasts long. That night, as Adrian returned to his study to review documents, Clara heard a loud crash from downstairs. She ran toward the sound, coming from the garage. She gasped. Adrian stood beside his car, his face pale. In front of him was a man with burning eyes and an expression twisted by rage. It was Dr. Edward Hale. "You can't hide this forever, Adrian. I know Nurse Clara is your weakness, and I know who you really are, the owner of St. Hallian Medical Center. Why did you disguise yourself? Why did you reject every offer I made to buy your shares?" His voice dripped with hatred. "Edward, our issue is business. Don't involve Clara. She knows nothing." "Oh, she knows," Edward sneered. "She knows she married an old man who pretended to be poor. I'll make sure everyone knows. I'll use this to destroy you and take the hospital." He shoved Adrian to the ground. Then his gaze shifted to Clara, frozen in place. "Nurse Clara," Edward said mockingly, "I already know you're just bait. Now you'll see, your husband won't be able to protect you anymore." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "These are the documents for a new share acquisition. I'll take over the hospital while Adrian is distracted by his young wife." Clara rushed to Adrian, helping him to his feet. She turned toward Edward, her eyes blazing. "Don't ever touch my husband again, Dr. Hale." "Oh, your husband?" Edward laughed cruelly. "You know he owns the hospital and you still stay with him? How cheap!" "Shut your mouth, Edward," Adrian barked, forcing himself upright. "Leave now, or I'll report you for assault and threats." Edward's laugh was cold and hollow. "This isn't over. I'll make sure you lose both the hospital and your wife. Just wait." He turned and walked away, leaving Adrian unsteady and Clara trembling. The first climax had arrived. Clara now knew Adrian's true identity and her own illness, and she also knew that Adrian's enemies had discovered their greatest weakness, their secret marriage, their love. Now Adrian's promise would be tested on the battlefield of ruthless corporate warfare. Clara was no longer fighting just for her life. She was fighting for Adrian's home and for the hospital that represented their only hope. That night felt colder and more menacing than any before. Adrian sat on the living room sofa, a bruise darkening his lip. Clara knelt before him, gently pressing a cold compress to the wound. The air was heavy with tension left behind by Edward's threat. "Why didn't you tell me he was the nephew of that corrupt shareholder?" Clara whispered, regret flooding her voice. "I accused you of being jealous when you were only trying to protect me." Adrian closed his eyes as the cold touched his skin. "I didn't want you involved in my dirty business world, Clara. I just wanted you to focus on getting better. Edward is an old problem. He craves power. He wants to turn the hospital into his personal empire, profit over care. And now he knows I'm your wife." Clara bit her lip. "He knows I'm your weakness." Guilt pressed heavily on her chest. "This is my fault. I exposed everything by being careless." Adrian opened his eyes and looked at her gently. "No, Clara, this isn't your fault. My mask was bound to fall someday, and it's better it fell in front of you than in front of my enemies." He took her hands. "Now you know everything. You know the risks we face." "What's the plan?" Clara asked. "He's threatening to take over the hospital and expose you." Adrian inhaled deeply. "I need to act fast. I prepared an emergency plan long ago in case my identity was revealed, and now I need you, Clara. Not just as my patient, not just as my wife, but as my ally." Clara nodded without hesitation. "I'm ready. Tell me what to do. I'm a nurse. I understand hospital operations. I know where weaknesses hide." For the first time, Adrian smiled fully, a smile that reached his eyes and warmed Clara's heart. "Good. We have two objectives. First, we move quickly with your surgery before Edward can weaponize your condition.
Second, we neutralize his influence on the board. He's gathering votes, exploiting my absence as the visible owner, convincing others I'm no longer fit to lead. What can I do for the second plan? Clara asked with fire in her eyes. Keep working as usual. Observe. Look for gaps. Edward is known for minor ethical violations, hard to prove. He exploits supply chains for medicine and equipment. As a meticulous nurse, you might notice details accountants overlook. I'll watch him, Clara said firmly. I'll be your eyes. That night, they worked side by side in Adrian's study. He finally opened the company files completely, revealing the complexity of St. Hallian Medical Center and how he had built it alongside Clara's father. Your father, Arthur Whitmore, wasn't just my friend, Adrian said. He was the moral backbone of this hospital in its early years. He convinced me to invest in care, not just profit. When he lost everything, I swore I'd repay that debt by protecting the most precious thing in his life. You, he said. Clara was deeply moved. That debt was an inheritance of love. In the days that followed, their secret marriage changed dramatically. Adrian no longer kept a distance. He became both commander and soulmate. They shared breakfast while discussing corporate tactics. Adrian made sure Clara took her medication on schedule. At the hospital, Clara began observing Edward closely. Edward grew more aggressive, convinced he could manipulate Clara to gain access to Adrian. One afternoon, he cornered her in a quiet hallway. "Clara, why are you so loyal to that old man?" he sneered. "You know he lied about who he is. I can give you a better life. I'll be CEO, you can be head nurse. Think about it." Clara stared at him with disgust. "I know everything, Dr. Hale. I know who Adrian is, and I know who you are. He built this hospital with heart. You only want to tear it down for money." She met his eyes unflinchingly. "I'm Adrian's wife, and I will never betray him." He smirked, trying one last attack. "You defend a man who hid the truth about your illness." Clara paused, then steadied herself. "I know about my condition, and I know Adrian risked everything to save me." She leaned closer. "That is real love, Dr. Hale, something you will never understand." Edward fell silent, stunned that she already knew.
"You're naive, Clara," Edward sneered. "You'll die at the hands of that old man. He'll be busy with his stocks and shares, and you'll fade away, slowly." "I will recover," Clara replied, her voice steady and unshaken. "And I'll be here to watch you fall, Dr. Hale." She turned and walked away, leaving Edward frozen in disbelief. Clara continued working, watching, listening. She began noticing irregularities in the procurement unit. She saw Dr. Edward Hale repeatedly approving purchase orders for extremely expensive imported medications, drugs rarely used in their wards. That night, Clara reported her findings to Adrian. "Adrian," she said, eyes sharp with focus, "I saw Edward approving purchase orders for medications coded X and Y. Those are highly specialized drugs used only for very specific patients. But the quantities ordered are massive. It doesn't make sense." Adrian immediately pulled up the documents on his computer. His face tightened. "This is it," he muttered. "I knew he had a weakness. He orders the drugs, but they never enter inventory. He's selling them on the black market at a premium." "But how?" Clara asked. "Isn't there an audit team?" "The audit team is controlled by his uncle, a minority shareholder. They've been covering it up as administrative errors." He tapped the desk thoughtfully. "But this time, the volume is too obvious. This could be the decisive blow we need." "We need physical evidence," Clara said without hesitation. "Edward must be keeping the original purchase orders." Adrian looked at her sharply. "That's dangerous, Clara. His office is always locked. I won't risk you." "I'll do it," Clara said, gripping his hand. "I know about my illness. I know your secrets. I won't let you face this alone." Her voice hardened with resolve. "We're married. Same boat, same destination. Edward threatened you, and he threatened my future." Adrian hesitated. Then he saw the fire in her eyes. "All right," he said at last. "We do this together. I'll make sure his office is empty tomorrow night. I'll give you a duplicate key, but promise me, if there's any danger, you retreat." "I promise," Clara said firmly. The plan was set. The nurse, who had once been forced into marriage, had now become a spy in a ruthless corporate intrigue. Clara was no longer afraid. Love and responsibility towards Adrian had become her armor. Edward's threats only accelerated her emotional healing and strengthened the foundation of a marriage that had once been fragile. They were ready to enter the most dangerous chapter yet, where truth and justice would be the stakes. That night, St. Halcyon Medical Center lay silent beneath the long shadows of corridor lights. Cold air from the central AC pierced Clara's skin, but what made her truly shiver was the tension inside her. Tonight, she would carry out the most dangerous mission of her life. She changed into plain clothes, far from her nurse's uniform, and waited in the ward, pretending to finish paperwork. A message from Adrian buzzed on her phone. "Office empty. 15 minutes. Be careful. I'm watching from a distance." Her heart pounded like a war drum. She slipped into the deserted administrative wing. Edward's office was on that floor. Clara pulled out the duplicate key Adrian had given her. Her hand trembled slightly as she inserted it. Click. The door opened. Edward's office was a stark contrast to Adrian's modest workspace. Luxury everywhere. Expensive decor. Certificates displayed with arrogance. A massive teakwood desk dominating the room. No time to waste. Rare drugs. Large quantities. Unrecorded, Clara murmured as she searched drawers quickly and silently like a shadow. In the last drawer, beneath a stack of business magazines, she found a red folder. On the cover, neatly labeled, "Illegal Export POs for Q4, Special Clients." That's it. She quickly photographed the documents with her phone. One file showed massive orders for drugs coded X and Y, shipped to a fictitious overseas trading company. Edward's signature was there. And even more shocking, his uncle's signature, the same man overseeing internal audits. "This is it," Clara whispered, relief flooding her chest. Proof of large-scale embezzlement. As she moved to close the drawer, something glinted at the bottom of a hidden compartment. A small jewelry box. Curious, she opened it. Inside were no jewels, only a USB flash drive and an old business card. Dr. Harris Sinclair, oncology specialist, rare autoimmune disorders. On the back of the card, handwritten notes. Patient S319, high complication risk, requires intensive observation. Clara froze. Instinct overrode caution. She inserted the USB flash drive into her phone. A folder appeared. S319. Inside were medical records and scans. She opened the file. Her heart slammed violently against her ribs. Patient name, Adrian Cole. Clara staggered, nearly dropping the box. "Adrian, a patient?" she whispered. She read further. Adrian had been diagnosed with an extremely rare degenerative autoimmune disease, explaining his fatigue, his isolation, his secrecy. Another file appeared, a letter from Dr. Harris Sinclair, addressed to Adrian. Clara read it. Each word struck like a sledgehammer. "Adrian, your prognosis is worsening. The experimental treatment you are funding for Clara is the only chance you have to survive. The protein compound you hope will save her may also slow your own cellular degeneration. Clara is the mirror patient who will determine your survival. Her surgery must succeed,
or we lose you both." Clara's phone slipped from her hand. Plot twist. Adrian was not only the owner of the hospital, he was also a patient, and worse, his life depended on Clara's recovery. Now she understood why he poured limitless funds into research, why he was obsessed with her treatment. Adrian wasn't saving her only because of a promise or love. He was fighting for his own life. He was both king and pawn in this game, sacrificing himself, hoping the cure he created for Clara would also become the antidote to his own poison. "Oh, God, Adrian," Clara whispered. The pain she felt cut deeper than her illness. She realized she was his fragile lifeline. "Get out, now," her internal alarm screamed. She changed shut the drawers quickly, and footsteps approached in the hallway. She froze. Not security, too fast, too arrogant. Dr. Edward Hale. "Clara, what's going on in there?" Edward's voice called from behind the door. He must have noticed the key missing. She hid behind the thick curtain in the corner just as Edward entered. He went straight to the desk, eyes narrowing at the disturbed drawer. "I know someone's here," he shouted. "Come out." Clara held her breath, eyes shut, praying the curtain would shield her. Edward stepped closer. Her heart nearly stopped as she caught the sharp scent of his expensive cologne. "I know you're here, Clara," he hissed. "You think you can expose my business secrets?" Suddenly, his phone rang. Edward cursed and answered. "What? An incident in the ER? Fine, I'm on the way." Furious, he grabbed something from the desk drawer, locked it, and stormed out. The door closed. The lock turned. She had escaped. Clara emerged, shaking violently. She no longer cared about the embezzlement evidence, only Adrian. She ran, faster than she had ever run, towards the parking lot. Adrian was waiting. She stumbled into his car, gasping, tears streaming down her face. Adrian turned, alarmed. "Clara, did you get it? Are you hurt? What happened?" She threw her phone on the seat. "We need to talk now." He pulled her into his arms instinctively. Clara clung to him fiercely. "You lied to me again, Adrian. A lie even bigger than before." He froze. He knew which secret she had uncovered. Slowly, he released her, guilt etched across his face. "You read the documents?" "Yes," she said through tears. "You're patient S319. You have the same disease, and the treatment you're funding for me is your only chance to live." Her voice broke. "You made me a mirror patient. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe this sacrifice was yours alone?" She screamed, betrayal and love colliding painfully. Adrian lowered his head. "I'm sorry, Clara," he whispered. "I didn't want you burdened. I wanted you to focus completely on healing, without fearing that your failure would mean my death too." He took her hands. "If the surgery works for you, only then can it be done on me. I put myself second." Clara grabbed his jacket. "I love you, Adrian."
I can take care of you and secretly fund the research without raising suspicion. I'll marry you, Clara, because I want to live for you, and I need you to help me stay alive. Clara broke down in tears. This was the most profound declaration of love she had ever heard. A love rooted not in romance alone, but in necessity, sacrifice, and a wager of life itself. "We'll fight together," Clara whispered. "We'll heal together. I won't let you die," she vowed, her tears falling onto Dr. Adrian Cole's hand. "I know," Adrian replied. His tone shifted, back to that of a commander. "Now, give me the evidence on Dr. Edward Price. We're holding an ace card. We have to take him down before your surgery." Clara handed him her phone. Adrian scrolled through the photographs, proof of embezzlement. A victorious smile appeared on his face. "Good. With this, Edward will fall, and then we can focus on your operation, Clara, the surgery that will save both of us." They left the hospital carrying not only evidence, but a dangerous secret now fully revealed. Clara finally understood. This was never merely a forced marriage. It was a battle for survival, and they would have to win it together. The emotional climax had passed. Now came the final war against the enemy outside. After Adrian's shocking confession and the revelation of his hidden identity, Clara no longer saw her husband as a cold, aging man. She saw a wounded hero, a man carrying the weight of 2 lives on his shoulders. Knowing that Adrian's life depended on her survival, Clara's fear transformed into fuel. Her illness was no longer just her burden, it was their shared battlefield. They arrived home before dawn. Adrian immediately downloaded the evidence from Clara's phone. Despite the technology and documents surrounding him, Adrian looked fragile, especially when he moved too quickly. Clara watched him now with the eyes of both a nurse and a wife. "You need rest, Adrian. Let me handle the paperwork." "Smart woman," he said softly. Her fingers massaged his tense temples. He shook his head. "No, we have to move fast. Edward will notice the missing documents soon. I need to call an emergency board meeting." "And you need rest," insisted Clara. "You're patient S319, don't forget." Adrian smiled gently, a smile he reserved only for her now. "I'll rest after Edward is gone. Seeing you smile is the best medicine I have right now." Reluctantly, Clara gave in, but she stayed by his side. They worked together through the night, a fusion of love and strategy. Clara verified drug codes and shipment dates, using her medical expertise to help Adrian compile an irrefutable report. Before sunrise, Adrian contacted the board members and major shareholders. He finally wielded the authority he had hidden for years. At breakfast, Clara said quietly, "I'll go to work as usual. I need to monitor Edward's movements." "No," Adrian replied firmly. "Today, you focus on yourself. Everything is arranged. You'll undergo confidential pre-op examinations." "Confidential? Edward is watching me." "He won't know. You'll be examined in the private underground wing, accessible only to a select few. The medical team from my foundation will handle everything, not the regular staff at St. Hallian Medical Center. You'll be registered under an anonymous ID, patient S113. Clara nodded, deeply moved by Adrian's meticulous protection. He was mobilizing his entire empire to shield her. That afternoon, Clara underwent the secret examinations. Dr. Henry Jameson, a leading oncologist specializing in rare diseases, mentioned in Edward's flash drive, welcomed her warmly. "Hello, Clara. I'm Henry. Adrian has explained everything. You're an incredibly brave patient." "Thank you, doctor. I'm ready. I want to live, not just for myself, but for Adrian." "That's the strongest motivation there is," Dr. Jameson replied. "Adrian Cole is my mentor. We're both risking everything on this research." "You are our hope," he said gently. As the examinations continued, Clara felt calm. She knew she was in the right hands. Throughout the day, Adrian sent updates. "The evidence has been submitted. The board meeting is underway. Stay calm, my love." Clara clutched her phone, heart racing. Meanwhile, a storm raged in the executive boardroom. After years of hiding behind the coat of a general practitioner, Dr. Adrian Cole finally stood before the board as the true CEO and majority owner. "I know you're shocked. My name is Adrian Cole. I built this hospital from the ground up with the late Arthur Whitmore. I went undercover to witness the corruption from within." Slides filled the screen. Illegal pharmaceutical orders, transfers to shell companies, Edward Price's signatures. Dr. Edward Price and his uncle embezzled funds meant for rare medications. These drugs never reached our patients. They were sold on the black market. Edward leapt to his feet, face flushed with rage.
This is a lie. You're jealous of my career. You're just an old doctor who is no longer relevant, and your wife, that nurse, Clara, stole my documents. My wife, Clara Whitmore, is a nurse of integrity. She acted because you threatened me and tried to dismantle the foundation that funds treatment for underprivileged patients. As majority owner, I demand that Dr. Edward Price and his uncle be immediately dismissed and reported to law enforcement for embezzlement and criminal threats. The board had no choice. That afternoon, the decision was unanimous. Edward Price was finished. Clara returned home at dusk to find Adrian waiting, exhausted but glowing with victory. "It worked," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Edward is gone. He can't hurt you anymore. St. Hallion is safe." "This feels different now," whispered Clara. "Thank you." "So what's next? When's the surgery?" "The day after tomorrow. Everything is ready. You'll take leave. You'll undergo the operation as patient S113, the same treatment Maya needed but never received." Clara kissed his forehead. "I'll make it through. For both of us. I'll open the path to your cure." That night, they didn't return to their separate roles. They sat together on the couch, sharing dreams. Adrian spoke of stepping back from power, dedicating his wealth to research and humanitarian work. "I don't need my title anymore," he said, holding her hand. "I just want to heal, with you, and be a real husband. I only need an honest man who loves me." Clara smiled. "The hospital ownership is just a touching bonus." That night, they slept side by side, not as a contract marriage, but as two souls bound by love and survival. Morning came cold and still. It was the day of Clara's surgery. Adrian hadn't slept. He sat beside her bed, gripping her hand. For the first time, fear consumed him. "You look more scared than I am," she teased gently. "How could I not be?" he whispered. "You're my world now, and you're my only bridge to life." "I'll cross it safely," she promised, "for you." As she was wheeled away, Adrian stood alone, a powerful man stripped bare by love. And for the first time in years, he prayed, not for control, but for her life.
Maya's smiling face flashed through his mind. Then her pallid face, drained by the same disease. And finally, Clara Whitmore's cheerful face, now lying motionless on the operating table. "Please, God, don't take her." Dr. Adrian Cole whispered the words, a raw prayer torn straight from his heart. "Take my wealth, take my power, take everything I own, but don't take Clara." Time slowed to a cruel crawl, like a snail inching across sun-scorched concrete. Every minute felt like an hour. For a man who controlled everything his entire life, Adrian had no choice but to surrender, to fate. After 3 hours that felt like an eternity, the operating room lights finally went dark. The doors opened. Dr. Henry Jameson stepped out, exhaustion etched into his face, but a wide, unmistakable smile curved his lips. Adrian shot to his feet. "How is she? Henry, my wife?" Dr. Jameson placed a firm hand on Adrian's shoulder. "The surgery was successful. Adrian, we did it. The research worked. We successfully implanted the required protein. She passed the critical phase. Now comes recovery." Adrian collapsed, not from pain, but from overwhelming relief. The tears he had held back for so long, tears of fear, guilt, and regret, finally spilled free. He pulled Henry into a tight embrace. Thank you," he whispered. "You saved both of us. You saved her." Henry shook his head gently. "You funded everything. You endured your own pain, and you gave her the strongest motivation possible. Now it's your turn. Once Clara recovers, we'll begin preparing your treatment."
Adrian looked at him, his smile finally reaching his eyes. Of course, but let me see her first. Clara was transferred to a hidden intensive care unit. Adrian entered quietly. She lay weak but peaceful, her face pale, her breathing steady. Relief flooded him. He sat beside her bed, holding her IV-lined hand. "You're strong, my love, stronger than anyone I know." That afternoon, Clara slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Adrian's face, exhausted, tear-streaked, yet glowing with joy. "Adrian," she tried to speak, her voice barely audible. "Shh," he said quickly, kissing the back of her hand again and again. "Don't talk yet. The surgery was a success. You're safe. You made it." Clara smiled faintly. We did it. Now it's your turn." "Yes, our turn. No more secrets, no more threats. We'll face everything together." Clara's recovery was slow but steady. She remained in confidential care for a full week. Throughout it all, Adrian never left her side. He brought his work into the recovery room, managing St. Hallian Medical Center from a chair beside her bed. One afternoon, Dr. Jameson arrived with new information. "Adrian, the board has seized Dr. Edward Price's shares and those of his uncle. St. Hallian is now fully under your control and your loyal team's. No one can threaten your ownership anymore." "Good," Adrian replied calmly, slicing fruit for Clara. His tone showed he no longer cared about titles or dominance. Clara, now able to sit up, squeezed his hand. "You've won everything. You defeated your business enemies, and you defied fate." "I won because I have you," Adrian answered. "You are the center of my strength." But even in happiness, a new storm loomed. Before his arrest, Edward Price had leaked fragments of information. "Adrian," Henry said gravely, "there are rumors spreading among staff and the media. They're questioning the sudden appearance of the hospital's real owner and the disappearance of nurse Clara Whitmore. We should clarify things before speculation damages the hospital's reputation." "What kind of clarification?" Adrian asked sharply. "I promised Clara a peaceful life." "About your true role as CEO, and about your marriage." Adrian turned to Clara. "I don't want to force you, but if I stand alone in public, they'll keep attacking us personally." Clara took a deep breath. She had fought her illness, now she would fight public judgment. "I'm ready," she said firmly. "I'm your wife. I won't hide anymore. We'll appear together." She smiled, confident and resolute. "We'll show them that what began as an obligation became destiny, and destiny became love." Adrian kissed her deeply, their first kiss free of fear, filled only with promise. With Clara fully recovered and Edward neutralized, it was time to lift the veil. For the stability of St. Hallian Medical Center and to protect Clara from wild speculation, Adrian knew he could no longer hide. Clara returned home, watching her husband prepare, not just as a man, but as a lion reclaiming his throne. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, helping him choose a tailored suit. "You'll lose the quiet life you value." Adrian turned, holding her hands. "I lost my peace a long time ago, when I lost Maya and learned I was sick too. But when I found you, I found something greater than peace. I'll lose silence and gain a happiness beyond measure." "I'll stand beside you," Clara promised. "I'm not afraid anymore." "I know," Adrian smiled, "but we must show them this marriage is real. I'm announcing not just my identity, but your role as the First Lady of St. Hallian Medical Center." He grinned mischievously, a side Clara loved. The press conference was held in the Grand Hall of St. Hallian Medical Center, Portland, Oregon. The room overflowed with journalists, board members, and hospital staff. Tension thickened the air. Then the side doors opened. Adrian entered, no longer the modest clinic physician, but a man in an elegant dark suit, gaze sharp, authority undeniable. "Good afternoon," he began calmly. "My name is Dr. Adrian Cole. I have long been known as a general practitioner. Today, I announce that I am the true majority owner and CEO of St. Hallian Medical Center." Gasps, flashing cameras. He explained his undercover years, his mission to protect integrity, and the exposure of Edward Price's crimes. "After removing corruption, we return to our true purpose, care, and I will not do this alone." He gestured. The door beside the podium opened. Clara Whitmore stepped forward in an elegant formal dress, calm, confident. Adrian took her hand. "Allow me to introduce my wife, Clara Whitmore Cole." A reporter fired an aggressive question. "Dr. Cole, how could you marry a young nurse from your own hospital? Was this a staged marriage to cover corporate scandal?" Adrian squeezed Clara's hand. "Our marriage is the most honest thing in my life. We married at the request of her late father, Arthur Whitmore, my closest friend. What began as duty became love, real, tested love." Clara took the microphone. "I'm proud to be Adrian's wife. He hid his identity not for power, but to protect this hospital. He married me not for money, but because he risked his life to save mine. I am a nurse. I know the front lines. I will serve as an operational integrity advisor, ensuring dignity for every patient, nurse, and doctor. Adrian is the CEO. I am his eyes on the ward." The room fell silent, then shifted. They hadn't just clarified the truth, they won hearts. Later, in Adrian's once empty executive office, they sat together in peace. "You were incredible," he said softly. "You're the fire that melts the ice around me." "We've faced worse," Clara replied, resting on his shoulder. "This is just media drama." Days later, Adrian transitioned leadership, becoming chairman and CEO focused on research and the foundation. Clara never returned to bedside nursing. True to her word, she became the hospital's integrity advisor, a role created just for her. One quiet afternoon, Clara sat in her new office beside Adrian's. The door opened. "Clara," Adrian said with a mysterious smile, "I have a surprise for you."
"Is it a new research project?" Clara asked softly. Adrian shook his head. "No, this is about the last promise I made to you." He held out a key. "This is the key to our new home. It won't be silent. We're moving next week. A house we chose together, not a house tied to the past." Clara gasped, then leapt into his arms. Adrian wrapped her tightly, grounding them both. "I've spoken with Dr. Henry Jameson," Adrian continued. "Our research is progressing rapidly. The medication used in your treatment has proven effective. Clara, we'll soon begin my follow-up therapy." Tears of joy streamed down Clara's face. "Thank God, Adrian. We'll heal. We'll live. We'll really live." "My love," Adrian whispered, holding her close, "I will never lie to you again. All secrets are gone. Our love is the only truth I need." They kissed, a love that began in obligation and mystery, now blooming into genuine happiness. They had survived illness, intrigue, and sacrifice. They proved that promises forced by fate could be transformed into an unbreakable bond by love and devotion. Adrian had reclaimed St. Halcyon Medical Center, but more importantly, he had reclaimed Clara's heart completely. Time moved forward. 6 months passed since the press conference that shook Portland, Oregon. St. Halcyon Medical Center was now led with unwavering integrity under Adrian's leadership as chairman, with Clara serving as advisor for clinical integrity. They didn't merely cleanse the management of corruption, they restored the soul of the hospital. Clara, fully recovered, lived with renewed purpose. Her life was no longer shaped by illness, but driven by hope.
And Adrian, after witnessing Clara's successful surgery, began the advanced treatment he himself needed. Her courage, combined with the effectiveness of the research he funded, produced remarkable results. Adrian no longer looked weary. The sorrow that once haunted his eyes had been replaced with calm and love. Their new home, Adrian called it the House of Hope, was a warm, modern villa filled with light and laughter. Gone was the heavy silence. The walls were adorned with photographs of their journey, including their first wedding photo, reframed as a reminder of a promise that once tasted bitter but endured. One evening, they sat on the balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and violet. "Dr. Jameson said today," Clara murmured, resting her head on Adrian's shoulder, "my condition is stable. I'm no longer patient S113. I'm free." Adrian held her tighter. "And so am I, my love. That degenerative disease is now under control. We both survived. Because of your courage, Clara, you saved us both." "No," she replied gently. "We saved each other. I was your reason to live, and you were my bridge back to life." Adrian glanced at the ring on her finger. "All my promises have been fulfilled," he said slowly. "I protected you, helped you build a meaningful career, removed every threat, and helped you heal. But there's one promise left." Clara looked at him, eyes glowing. "What promise?" Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "To marry you, not out of obligation or debt, but out of true love." Inside lay a new ring, its diamond shining like a star. "Clara Whitmore," he said, voice trembling, "will you marry me again, this time forever, with a full heart, no secrets and no shadows from the past?" He bent slightly on one knee. Clara couldn't hold back her tears. "Yes, Adrian, 1,000 times yes, I will." He slid the ring onto her finger beside their first wedding band. "2 rings," Clara whispered, kissing him tenderly. "One for a promise born in the past, and one for the love that belongs to our present and future." Months later, they held their second wedding, a joyful yet intimate celebration of love. The guests included loyal staff from St. Halcyon Medical Center, Dr. Jameson, and a handful of trusted longtime associates. At the reception, Elena Moore, Clara's old friend, approached with misty eyes. "I still can't believe it, Clara. You married that cold, older doctor, and he turned out to be the true prince of healthcare. Your life is a plot twist no one could predict." Clara smiled. "The twist was bitter at first, but sweet in the end. I didn't marry Adrian's wealth. I married his heart, a heart willing to sacrifice everything for a promise." Adrian joined them, wrapping an arm around Clara's waist. "She's right," he said warmly, "and I owe everything to the late Arthur Whitmore. He was the architect of our love." Nearby, a young woman approached, Clara Cole, Adrian's adopted daughter. "Congratulations, Dad, Clara. You're the strongest couple I've ever seen." "Thank you, Clara," Clara Whitmore replied with a smile. Their relationship was now warm and natural, free of the awkwardness Clara once feared. After the celebration, they returned home. Sitting on the porch under the quiet night sky, Clara spoke softly. "Do you remember when I first moved into that silent house? I was terrified I'd hate you." "I was afraid you already did," Adrian admitted. "I thought you saw me as a puppet master." "I did," Clara said honestly. "But now I know, every rigid, distant act was a hidden embrace. You never forced me. You only forced me to live." Adrian kissed the top of her head. "And you, Clara, you gave me the courage to stop hiding. You gave me a reason to fight my illness and confront evil. Without you, I might still be a shadow in that clinic, waiting for death. And I would have returned to a small regional hospital, waiting for my disease to claim me." They clasped hands. "We were 2 souls destined to fight together." Adrian Cole was now whole, a loving husband, a leader of integrity, and a fortunate survivor. They didn't just find love, they found a second life filled with meaning. A marriage that began with obligation, debt, and secrets ended as a deeply moving love story about a father's sacrifice, a wife's courage, and a husband's honesty. The woman once forced to marry an older doctor found her greatest destiny, becoming the partner of a man who risked everything, even his life, for love and promise. That night, beneath the stars, they vowed to build a life rooted in honesty and joy, where love was the only secret they would ever share. a happy ending.